It's literally 18 billion degrees outside. So that's why we're not wearing anything beyond ideally linen, and then really nothing else is bearable at this point. If you're in the Washington, Seattle area, you would know that we are experiencing a little bit of a heat wave. It's about 89 outside right now. This apartment has no AC, as you can imagine. And currently inside it is 83 degrees, so a bit roasty toasty, as you might expect. Hello, welcome back. My name is Charlotte. I'm a knitter, maker person in Washington State who is just on YouTube talking about, right now, her knitting. Hopefully in the future she might be talking about other things. I don't know why I'm talking in third person. This is my little place, my time, where I get to just talk about what I'm making and some of my process and what I hope to be making in the future. Right now it's mostly knitting, but I did just set up my sewing machine, so hopefully I will get back into sewing. There are lots of things that I want to do and try. So welcome back. There are so many of you now. I literally can't believe it. I just saw that my first video reached 10,000 views, which I can't even begin to comprehend how that has happened. And now I'm here, and now I make YouTube videos, so I'm gonna have to up my video game here. I don't feel like I have a ton of stuff to talk about that's different than, episode 2, but I have some new stuff. I have things for you that I want to talk about. For me, that I want to talk about. I'm here by myself. Still wrapping my head around the whole thing, to be honest, but I wanted to start with some things that I've finished. The first top I'm going to show you that I've actually finished is something that I'll insert a picture of it here so you can see it on me. But this is the Alice top by Petite Knit. I'm trying to get a better close-up of the fabric. If some of you were here for episode 2, you would have remembered me talking about this yarn. This is this cotton silk blend that I was really surprised I bought from Bend, Oregon. It's by Tacky Yarns, and it's the Whidbey base. 54% cotton, 23% silk, and 23% polyamide. It's 50-gram ball, 120 yards. It's a worsted weight yarn. Calls for US 8. The Petite Knit Alice top pattern does call for a worsted weight yarn and a US 8. Now, I really like this top. I'm really happy with how it came out. The reason I kind of switched gears and decided to make this was, one, I really needed something that was summer friendly and wasn't going to make me melt into a puddle on the floor every time I picked it up. This was much nicer to knit on than wool in the heat that we've been having. I also just needed some success, honestly. There was a black top that I was attempting to self-draft the last time I saw all of you, and I tried it on about halfway through, right where I would have split for sleeves, on this top, and it didn't fit. I don't know why my gauge was off. I did a gauge and everything should have been lining up, but it didn't fit, and it split my brain in half trying to visualize how I would do the shaping. You'd think it would be pretty straightforward if you've knit a handful of garments, but I'm a very tactile person, and I'm a very, very much a visual learner. And I solidify everything I learn by actually doing it. So it's good for me to fail a couple times because I think I just learned better that way. So that top was a fail. I'm gonna attempt to pick it up again, but this top was a really great way to have a simple, easy, fast knit that allowed me to learn the mechanics and the basic construction of a tank top. This is one of those patterns that it's like the bare bones of any type of top you see like this. So you can learn a lot about how to make pretty well-fitting tank tops and short sleeve shirts by doing this. And in Petite Knit, you know, she uses a couple pretty nifty tricks. I really particularly enjoyed the way she did the shoulder shaping. She did these like rapid decreases here, which it's hard to pick up on this camera, but it gives a really nice effect on the shoulder. She has a really nifty little like slip stitch trick that she does for the neckline, so it doesn't have any strange puckering. I will say I did modify this. When I first finished it, I was really unhappy with how it fit. Overall, you know, the ease and how the fabric hugged me and how it draped, I was fine with that. What I was not happy about was how the armhole just like, it stretched out quite a bit, and it was not bra friendly at all. The first time I blocked it and wore it, I had to take it off halfway throughout the day because it was driving me insane, having to like adjust my bra strap. I felt like the straps, the actual, you know, straps of it, the top of it, they were puckering in a lot because this pattern is all originally intended to be raw edges. So you don't do any type of ribbing or I-cord in the pattern, which would help counteract some of that natural rolling that especially satin stitch likes to do when you just knit straight and don't have any type of applied edge. And I don't know if it was the combination of that, just lack of edging, and the yarn maybe that I chose that caused it to stretch out so much, but the armholes were way too big. It cinched in too much. It almost looked like a razorback tank top. And then the bottom, I had the same issue with the bottom. There was no edging on the bottom, and so it just had that raw hem look that kind of has a tendency to stretch out more than you'd like and then roll up. So I decided to not live with that, and I went back and I did an additional, I guess it would be an applied I-cord edge. And on this fabric, it's quite nice, I think, because you can literally hardly see it. You can kind of see it a little bit if you turn it inside out. But I am so happy that I did this because it just gave this garment so much structure that it didn't have before. It made the armholes very sturdy. I confidently wore this after I did this applied I-cord to the armholes and the bottom. I confidently wore it all day. I put it on in the morning. I wore it to work. I walked the dog in it. I went to get groceries in it. I carried stuff with my backpack with it on. Like, I wore it and I didn't really think about the fact that I was wearing it. And to me, that's the testament of, okay, I'm comfortable in this, that I want every time, really every time I make anything that I'm going to put on my body. That's really my standard because, look, these things take time. Even though this was considered a fast knit, it still took like a week and a half to knit this up. I had to buy the materials. I had to put all the mental energy into thinking about what I wanted to make with this particular yarn. And so I'm very happy that I didn't just, you know, scrap this or put it into a pile of things that I made but I'm not going to wear. So that's a helpful little tip for anyone who's wanting to make this top. If it doesn't fit well, try doing an applied I-cord edge, and it might tighten up your, like, the actual diameter a little bit. And also, to that point, when I picked up for my I-cord, I made sure to pick up 2 stitches 2 I-cord stitches for every 3 knit stitches. Because I started with a diameter that was too big, I knew I wanted to ever so slightly cinch it in a little bit. And if I had picked up just purely every single stitch, it wouldn't have done anything. It would have just been a more secure armhole that was still too big. So keep that in mind. If you just want to add a nice edging but you're happy with how big the armhole is, you probably could just do like 1 stitch per I-cord stitch. But I knew I wanted to cinch it in a bit, so that's why I did it that way. And then at the bottom, I obviously didn't want the bottom to cinch in at all. I just didn't want it to roll, so I did the bottom with 1 I-cord stitch per regular stitch. Yeah. So that's that top. I'm very happy with it. I think it's a super solid pattern and one that's really easy to modify if you wanted to add little details to it, or even do stripes. That could be fun. It's a very inclusive and easy pattern to start with if you want to understand how, again, short sleeve tops are kind of constructed, or if you just want an easy summer knit that's going to be pretty mindless. The yarn, I loved the effect that this yarn had. I will say it's particularly toothy and catches quite easily on itself. So I had some difficulty with tension. It has a lot of texture to it, and so just be mindful if you have yarn like this, or if you purchase this yarn. It's great. I love it. I love the feel of it. I love everything about the finished product of it, but it did kill my hands a little bit when I was working on it. I'm a tight knitter working on that, but just be mindful of that. Maybe loosen up a little bit, or go down a needle size so that you can knit a bit looser. Like, just, it hurt my hands a bit. The next thing that I'm super excited about is, ta-da, my Sophie Scarf. This came out, I just think it came out so nice. It's such a simple pattern. This is the yarn that I talked about in my last episode, that La Bien Amy yarn. RGO tomato is the color. It's like a cashmere silk, and it's just cashmere and silk. I'll insert again the situation on the side here that tells you what's in it. And then I held it double with the Diamond Lane, they're a brushed alpaca strand of yarn that you hold with it in this red color, and it just came out so nice. I didn't do all of the increases. I really didn't want a super bulky scarf. And the reason I didn't want a bulky scarf was I knew that I would be wearing this just as like a little neck scarf, and so I didn't want a lot of extra bulk. And even this, like, it's folded down in half to give the effect that it is now. This is very warm, like, even though it is very tiny, because of the alpaca and the fluffiness of it, it is super warm. So do not be deterred. If you want something that's actually functional, you could do the bigger size and just have it cover your neck and wear it with any coat, and you would have something very, very practical that's going to keep you, dare I say, a little sweaty at times. I wore this to Flock Fiber Festival a week ago, and it was about 68 degrees, and there were times where I was like, girl, it's sweaty up in here. But I've worn this a lot. I mean, it's a great pattern. It's, again, a really great pattern to kind of give you some insight into how shaping is done and some different ways that shaping is done. It's just a garter stitch, and you start with doing, you essentially cast on 6 stitches, and you are I-cording either side. So you're knitting 3, slipping the other 3 with the yarn in the back, turning, and just repeat that for about 8 rows. And then you're slowly increasing stitches on the inside, which is giving it that gentle shaping for the garter. And then you do the same thing but decreasing. And again, you could do this pattern in garter, and if you have like a stitch pattern book, you could do essentially this exact same thing with the I-cord edging and just insert a different stitch pattern, which I think is pretty cool. Again, it's a very simple stitch. It's a very simple pattern, but it really did teach me a lot and gave me a lot of ideas of things that I could do in the future where maybe I just don't need to actually purchase a pattern. I could just make it because technically I know how this was made. So that's why I think patterns like this are very useful, even though they're simple and everyone like has done them, and you might be thinking, well, why am I going to spend $5 on a pattern for like just this super simple little thing? For me, you're not really just buying the pattern, you're really buying education when you purchase patterns. You're purchasing something that's going to hopefully teach you a new way how to do something. And then obviously you have the finished garment at the end. But yeah, I love this. I could see myself whipping out a lot of these for gifts and using up scraps. So no complaints, 10 out of 10. Next, we're gonna talk about whips, works in progresses. This is my Calypso sweater. Again, it's late in the day, so I'm sorry, but the lighting is maybe not the best to see the colors, but if you go to my Instagram page, there's photos of this with much better lighting where you'll be able to see the amazingness. I tried this on the other day, and even though it is blistering hot outside, I really just wanted to keep working on this. Couple things. I've started the first sleeve. I've opted for no decreases on the sleeve. I am just doing a straight sleeve. I prefer the sleeves that way. I don't like it when sleeves cling to me at all. And I just find that because of my height, for whatever reason, I just feel like things that are a bit boxier look better on me. Don't come at me. But I like a straight sleeve. I'm almost ready to do my ribbing. The modifications I've done on this pattern are not really that extensive, but I felt I should mention, since I didn't last time, I did do just a fold over collar instead of the original pattern, which calls for a picot edge. I thought about doing a picot edge because I've never done it before, but it just isn't, I don't think that it's my style. And again, I'm a big believer, I haven't always been this way, but more and more I'm finding that I'm really drawn to less is more. I mean, I say that as I'm wearing like this crazy pattern and like fish earrings, but when it comes to my knitting, less is more. And I find I'm happier with them when I do a bit less to them. So I didn't really want a decorative collar. I just did a basic, boring fold over collar. And for the bottom, there originally in the pattern there is color work. I opted for no color work, and I just did a twisted rib with a tubular bind off. The body has no shaping on this. What I did do recently for this, which I'm really happy that I did, and again, I didn't get footage of this, although I should have, but the last time you saw this, I had not done either arms, and I had already done the hem. And as I was trying it on, I was a little apprehensive because I felt like it was cinching in a bit. The pattern calls for you to use a US 5 for the body and the color work. And then it calls for, I believe, a size 2 or 2.5 to do all of the ribbing. Now, if you were going by what I would say is standard form, if you're going to do your body in a US 5, you probably would do your ribbing in a US 3. You downsize needles by 2 sizes. This was 3 sizes to go down in the hem. So it really cinched it in. Which at first I was like, okay, like it'll probably block out okay. And then it was like I couldn't sleep at night thinking about it, because even trying it on now, before it was finished, I was just not loving how much ease I had at the top in the body, and then how dramatically it cinched in. I really was not liking it. No fault of the pattern. I mean, obviously lots of people have knit the pattern and love it. It comes down to personal preference for so many of these patterns and what we end up making. But I knew that I didn't like the way it cinched in because there was no intention written into the pattern for it to do that. Like, there was no shaping here that would have gradually made that, I guess that A-frame almost, where tops sometimes are designed and have shaping to come in gradually. And that can look nice, but with this, it just was awkward. It caused a lot of puckering to happen, like in the body. And there's still a tiny bit, but so all that to say, I decided to rip out my tubular bind off. Rest in peace me, because doing that in mohair was, in the heat, it was not fun. But I ripped it out. I ripped out the ribbing, and then I redid the ribbing in a US 4. I really did not want any cinching. I wanted it to lie completely straight and to have just as much drape as like the rest of this fabric does. So my point with that, one, that's what I did. I'm telling you what I did. But also, knitting for me, it's different than something like sewing. When you sew and you're making something, if you cut that fabric to be a certain length and you're trying to make something that is decently fitted, you're pretty much stuck if you've made that cut, right? Like, you can only rip out so much in terms of seams, and you can only adjust so much if you've already cut the fabric and it's too small, or it's too, I guess if it's too big, you can always cut it to be smaller, but there's less wiggle room. With knitting, you can always rip it out and do it again. Or, like in the case of this tank top, you can always add something that's maybe going to make you a bit more comfortable in it. And I mean, I say this all the time. When it comes to knitting things that I'm going to wear, if I'm not liking it halfway through, I usually have no issue ripping it out, frogging it, and re-knitting it, because you do put so much time, effort, brain energy, and money into making these things. So that's my word of encouragement to all of you out there. Like, don't settle for things that maybe don't fit, or if it's not turning out the way you want, like, just rip it out and do what you can to make it fit in a way that you're at least going to be comfortable wearing it, because it would be such a shame to have these beautiful things and beautiful patterns and garments and just not have them fit, or not have them make you feel comfortable wearing them. So take the time. My second work in progress is another Sophie scarf. It's the same base, but just a different alpaca. I'm using the orange now. And so, as you can see, this one has a bit more of a marled effect, and it's, it's similar, but it's more orangey than my other one. I've been doing this when I don't want to be bothered to think about anything else other than just knitting back and forth. I forgot to mention in my finished objects, this is mostly finished, but this is the little scarf that I'm making for my best friend's son. It's just going to be a super simple rib, and the only thing I have to do is put the tassels on and then block it. For the other two, I really did not end up enjoying going back and forth and knitting, like alternating between knits and purls. So I think for the next two, for the next two, I'm going to somehow do something where I don't have to do that. I can just mindlessly be knitting, whether that's in the round somehow or maybe just garter stitch. I haven't quite decided yet. And I also have just been distracted with other things that I haven't really wanted to pick up and knit the other scarves, but this is it. This is the little guy's scarf. I have another sweater that I'm working on, the E03 light sweater that I talked about last time, but I've literally made no progress on that. I haven't even picked it up. That has been, they're so sweaty to knit. So that's just kind of chilling. But I do have quite a few plans of things that I'm going to cast on in the near future, hopefully by the next time a video comes out. So I did want to talk about those things. The first one is something that my mom and I are doing together, which is really fun. We had been seeing all of the knit-alongs and all the Instagram photos, all the Ravelry photos of the Tessellated Vest by Andrea Mowry. And so we scurried on up to Spin Cycle up in Bellingham and decided to purchase just the exact same yarn that's part of, you know, all the kits that they're doing to make that vest. We had never done that before. I've personally never used the recommended yarn for any pattern I've ever done, I don't think. And so this was a first for me to purchase just exactly what the designer used for the original design. And I am very happy with the colors that I chose. We have our Spin Cycle here. Oh, focus, focus. But it's a little bit hard to see in this light, but it has, you know, slight hues of gold, cream, it has some gray in there. So it's very, not super surprising, but it's going to marry the white and the mustard color really nicely, I think. So this, the fuzzy stuff here, this is the Farmer's Daughter fibers. And it is a 74% Suri alpaca and 26% silk. It's a lace weight yarn, and it's going to be used as one of the contrast colors. The main color I chose is this white color, and that is the Spinster Daughter. Apparently this is like it's like a collab yarn, basically, between the Farmer's Daughter fiber and Spin Cycle. So I don't know the full story of this, but that's what this is. And this is a sport weight 100% superwashed American wool in the colorway natural. So it's just white. And then I forgot to mention the color of the mustard alpaca is Shake-a-Day. And then Spin Cycle, this is their dyed in the wool. What color is it, Charlotte? Grumpy Birds. So those are the colors that I'm using for the Tessellated Vest. I'm super excited to cast it on. I think I'm going to make the size 2. I'm pretty confident in the sizing. I don't think I need to do a gauge. I did a tiny little gauge and then I ripped it out because I'm constantly afraid of running out of yarn. But I'm going to knit the size small. Now, I will say, I do have some opinions about maybe the yarn, particularly the base. I have no issue with the pattern, obviously, and I haven't even started it, but this was very expensive yarn. Spin Cycle, I think everyone knows and has an expectation that it's going to be fairly expensive. For their dyed in the skein wool, like one skein of 200 yards, it's $34, I believe. This Suri alpaca, 300 yards, was $28. And then this base, this white superwash 100% American wool base, was $34. Now, I am the first person to say that if you're going to support certain small businesses, you maybe shouldn't be so nitpicky about the price, because this is a small business and this is somebody trying to use American grown products and they're trying to use American mills. They're not trying to outsource. and they're doing it on a small scale. And small scale in fiber always means like the price is going to go up. And that's true, I would say, across the board. Like if you're really shopping for sustainable, locally, or at least American produced fiber, it's going to be a bit more expensive. My concern is that I'm not going to love the feel of this when it's knit up. It is a superwash base, so it tends to have that like squeaky feel to it. And it feels okay caked up, but it doesn't feel the best. It feels a bit acrylic-y, dare I say. It might wash up and bloom to not feel that way. It might really soften up. I'm hoping it really softens up, because right now it's not scratchy, but it's just kind of lackluster. And listen, as I said, for a size small, I needed 4 skeins, and I don't remember the exact price, but it was over $130 for all of it. So that's expensive, right? The spin cycle, hard to find different options for that, although Young Folk Knits does have a really awesome video all about different dupes essentially for the spin cycle yarn that are way cheaper. So definitely go check that out if you're wanting to make the tessellated vest but don't want to dump, $35 into one skein. And then this Surrey alpaca, lots of people have different options for this. I'm pretty sure Drops has a brushed alpaca that's way more affordable than this. And then this base, I'm just kind of unsure how it's gonna knit up. I almost wish that I had just bought these 2 colors and maybe went with something that wasn't super wash for the base, or something that I liked a bit more. I wasn't really thinking though when I bought it. We were just so excited to be making the same thing that we kind of just bought it. But I was very surprised at the price. I expected the spin cycle and the alpaca to be more expensive. I did not expect this yarn to be $34 a skein, not in a million years. I would have thought this would be closer to $20, $25. So very excited for the pattern, a little bit apprehensive on the yarn. More than anything, I just wish it had been a little bit cheaper. And I would encourage anyone who's wanting to make the tessellated vest that just because you're not knitting with the recommended yarn per se doesn't mean you're not going to get a product that maybe isn't as of high quality. You might even get something that's of higher quality. I've seen non-superwash bases that are a better price and I think feel better than this. So it all depends on your tastes and what you like. The next thing I won't spend much time on because I've already talked about it a decent bit, but I did do a gauge for my Telvinen. I think my gauge is pretty much right on where it needs to be. I haven't done an exact measurement yet, but it's a pretty open knit, which I'm happy about. It's not the softest thing, but the Rama Phenol is a pretty rustic yarn. So it's very toothy. It blooms really nicely so far. I could probably wear this next to skin, but I know a lot of people who probably wouldn't love this next to skin. This is definitely going to look like a rustic sweater. I think it's going to look really cool, but it's going to definitely have a rustic feel to it. So if you're not into that, this yarn probably isn't for you, I would say. You might be better off with the original yarn in the pattern or just something different entirely. But I imagine this being my hiking sweater. Like when I want to take the dog and go on a brisk walk in the morning, I can see myself chucking this on and just feeling so cool. Okay, the last 2 things that I want to talk about are both things that I've done swatches for, and they're both going to be patterns by Petite Knit. and they're both going to be slipovers. I've never made one of her slipovers, and I didn't intend to make 2 of her patterns at the same time, but I had a couple different yarns and I was just at a loss for what to do with them. But I think I have the perfect projects in mind for them. So the first one, I want to make the Ingrid Vest, or it's the Ingrid Pullover by Petite Knit, and I want to use this really awesome farm yarn from, where is it from? Wing and a Prayer Farm. They're a Vermont-based farm and also yarn company on the East Coast. I purchased this yarn back at Rhinebeck 2022. It was the first time I had ever gone to the Rhinebeck Festival. It was the most magical weekend of my life. It was a solo trip, driving through the Catskills of New York, perfect weather. I just had the best time. And I ended up only purchasing yarn from them. I bought this, there's no name, but this yarn base is just Wilbur and Fluffhead. So obviously they're very, very local and very, very small scale, so if they can name their bases after their sheep. But it's a 20% wool and then 80% alpaca yarn. So very, very soft. It has a really nice halo to it, and it has a slight hairiness to it, but nothing that would be too intense for me. And again, like, this is very, very soft. So I'm very excited about this. I don't have a ton of it though. It was very expensive for obvious reasons. I think it was like $35 a skein. And so I only bought enough really for a vest or a pullover of some kind, or a very cropped sweater. And given the alpaca and how thick this yarn is, like, this is a worsted weight yarn, I would say. I thought a sweater in this base would just be way too hot and way too sweaty and not something I would end up gravitating towards. So I decided to go with that vest. I haven't done a gauge in the stitch pattern yet, but I'm pretty confident that it's going to be how I envision it being, and I think it'll be a really great way to utilize this yarn. The next thing I'm a little bit surprised by, and I've been a little bit perplexed on what to do with this yarn. So earlier this year, my mom and I attended Maryland Sheep and Wool, as we do now. It's turning into a tradition. And I ended up purchasing some yarn by Jill Draper, which she's a pretty well-known hand dyer who's known for these really, I mean, the colors that she gets and the tweediness that she gets is just pretty insane. I have some other yarn in this same base that's like a rusty maroon color, and it's also a really intense tweed. Like, there's so many different colors happening in this yarn. It's hard to see, but there's navy blue, there's yellow, there's red, there's brown. Like, it's a pretty intense color when it comes down to it. It's a DK weight. It's Targhee wool, 100% Targhee. And I just haven't known what to do with this. I think it's too yellowy, personally. Like, it doesn't look super yellow in this light, but it really does have like a brightness to it. And so I originally thought it could be cool to do an all-over cable sweater, and I thought the Purpurea sweater by Teti Lutzig would have been a really great option, but I did a gauge, and again, I didn't really love it by itself. And so I thought, well, what if I held it double with something that, you know, kind of fluffed it up a bit? And so that's why I purchased this. This was the yarn that I purchased at Flock Fiber. This is from the Lamb & Kid, and it's the Diamond Lane Birdie base in light fingering. So it's very fluffy. It is 74% alpaca and 26% silk. This is the same base that I'm using as my contrast yarn with the Sophie scarves that I've been making, and I love it. It's incredible. So maybe these two together could be fun. Maybe this would be cute. And I did a swatch, as you can see. It really did tone down the yellowing in this yarn, and it made it much softer. It made my gauge much bigger, the ability for it to be a much more open knit, because the issue that I was having when thinking about doing cables with this, held double with this alpaca, was my gauge was going to be all over the place for the original pattern, that cabled sweater that I wanted to do. And so I was again kind of at a loss. I was like, I've had this yarn for a while now and I just don't know how I want to use it. And I started, you know, thinking, using my brain a little bit. And this color is really intense. Like, it's a bright, mossy, tweedy green. Holding it with the alpaca, the alpaca is slightly darker, so it does tone it down a little bit, which I think makes it a bit more wearable. And I think it just makes it look a bit neater. There's something about this that I'm just not loving how it's knitting up. There's something about the intensity of the tweed that's just making me feel like, nah, that's too busy. Like, what's going on there? So I think I have settled on the fact that this yarn and subsequent fabric, this top one, would look best in a very, very simple pattern that does not cover my whole body. Listen to the madness. I think that this would be really nice in the petite knit weekender slipover. She has a weekender sweater. I want to do the slipover, and I want to do the V-neck version. For me, the way I thought about that was, because this fabric is so intense, it's going to be a statement all on its own. The fabric in of itself is going to just be like, what is going on there? It's got this brightness to it while still kind of being a neutral. Like, it's a very busy fabric in a lot of ways. And so trying to have that compete with any type of intricate stitch pattern, I just think would end up looking like way too much. And for me, it would end up being too busy and probably something that I didn't end up wearing. And the weekender slipover is a very simple all-over stockinette stitch. I opted for the V-neck again because this is going to end up being pretty warm, so I don't really want anything like up on my neck at all. But that's what I've decided on for that. Hopefully I don't change my mind, because this is what happens, people. I get all these ideas. I think forever and ever and ever and ever and ever about how I'm going to use, you know, a yarn that I've purchased. And I will go back and forth, and I will say for like 4 months, oh, I'm going to make a cabled sweater with this. I'm going to make a cropped cable sweater with this. And then I'll just let that idea sit in my brain for several months while I'm working on something else. And then I'll completely change my mind, and I'll think that was a silly idea, or oh, I don't like that, or oh, I don't think I'm actually ever gonna wear it if I make that with that yarn. And it's a little bit, it's a lot. It's a lot up here sometimes. So that's everything I have to talk to you about, I think. I don't know. I think I felt a bit scattered this time speaking to you guys. Hopefully it comes out well and it makes sense to you, and hopefully the information is good for you all. I think maybe it's the heat, maybe it's the fact that, oh, there's actually like a significant number of people watching, and I want it to be something that is helpful to you and valuable to you, as well as I've said, something that in a way holds me accountable. I've said to all of you you know, I'm going to cast these things on, I'm going to make these things, and it's a way of keeping me accountable and helping me keep stock and take stock of the things that I've made, what I want to make, what I've learned from making those things. And yeah, hopefully you find some of that experimentation helpful and something that you can use. As always, I just want to say how grateful I am and happy I am that you are all here. It really does just give me so much joy. I know I keep saying that, but if you're new or haven't seen any of the past content that I've come up with, I really am so grateful that you're here. I was just talking to my mom today about how I think it's just the season of life that I'm in, but the things that I enjoy doing, the way that I like spending my time, it inadvertently ends up being a lot of alone time, a lot of time with just me. You know, I work from home, I work remotely, which is new for me as of this last year. I am really investing a lot more time into, I guess, the things that I genuinely do enjoy, which inherently are kind of things that don't involve other people. Like, I don't knit with other people. I don't have friends who are really as into the crafts as I am, and so there's been just a lot of time with just me, which has been good and beautiful in its own way, but I was really craving just, I don't know, a little bit of connection to people over the things that I like. And so this community, which is already kind of starting, I've seen some repeat people who comment on videos, and that has just been really special for me. Getting to make something and then have people respond so positively, I really do appreciate it, and it really does give me a lot of joy and give me a lot of motivation to keep going, even though sometimes, you know, we can talk about it. It does get lonely sometimes. Things are different since COVID. Life gets strange sometimes, and it's just not what it used to be, or you feel like it's not what it used to be, but it's okay, and there's a season for everything. And in the words of my grandmother and my mom, I guess this too shall pass, although this is a good time. I don't necessarily want this to pass, but you know what I'm saying. There are things in people's lives where you just need to hear that, and you hear it's a season you're in. It's okay. Like, it will pass. I don't know what got me off on that, but I'm really grateful that you're here. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye.